And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for coming out to our meeting. And I'd like to introduce Roller Angel, who will be talking to us about Ansible and all the various wonderful things that are going on with Ansible. So please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about Ansible. I really enjoy using Ansible. And to get this kicked off, how about we do some code? First things first, I'm going to create a droplet here on DigitalOcean because Ansible is really good at taking a machine that's, a fresh machine. So I'm just going to create the cheapest machine here, 0.007 cents an hour, and just throw it up in a data center. And Ansible is really good at configuring everything that I would do manually over SSH. I would need to give, if I didn't already have my SSH key on DigitalOcean, I would just click new SSH key here and put my public key in. But really, that's all this machine knows is I'm just giving it a SSH key, and then Ansible is going to do the rest for me. So I can just call this whatever I want, but I'm going to actually give it the name of the DNS address that I'm going to assign to it in here in a second. So let's just go ahead and create that droplet. And I have my DNS configured with DigitalOcean, so I can actually just come right here to give it a host name. So if I do globe API workshop.lab, it'll automatically put it at my .bsd.pw domain, and then I can say, go to this new droplet that I just created. And let's lower this in case we need to create another one. But so that's going to go and create a machine. And now let's talk about how do you use Ansible. Well, on Ansible, you're going to need a machine that has Ansible on it. I believe it's capital V. Yeah, so I do have Ansible on here. You'll see there's a lot of different commands that you can use to run it. And where did I get Ansible? Well, you can install Ansible as a Python from Python. You could just search the Python package index and grab it. Or if your package manager, for instance, I'm using FreeBSD. So if I just did package search Ansible on FreeBSD, it would show me there's this, I can actually just grab Ansible by just typing package install py38 Ansible. I like to do it this way because then I'm not clobbering my main Python environment with an extra project. Or the other alternative is I would just have to create like a Python, virtual environment and put in, I would have to create one specifically for Ansible and just install Ansible inside of that, then activate it just in order to use Ansible. So I prefer to actually just install it with the system that you're using as a package. And there are different advantages and disadvantages to that. On FreeBSD, you're not going to get Ansible adding a default configuration file to your system, which I find nice because I like my Ansible to be separate into different projects. So for instance, here's one of my projects, and with Ansible inside of it, I can keep all the configuration just right here in this folder. And let me know if this is big enough for you, or if I can make it a little bit bigger. How about that? So I have my configuration here in this ansible.cfg file, and I keep my folders here organized in a certain way. Ansible is very flexible in how it lets you organize your playbooks. Playbooks are kind of like, how I would explain it is, Ansible lets you be the coach instead of the player. I guess a sports analogy I'm using here, but in sports, once you get really good at the game, you know how to do all the different plays. You understand how to run through them, but as the coach, you don't want to run through them all yourself anymore. You want to just use the playbook and say, here, do this, and have your players do all the things that they already know how to do. Another good benefit of it is it's kind of like a documentation. You know, how many times have you sat down and configured one of your Unix machines to do something, and then later on down the road, you need to do it again, and you find yourself digging through the documentation and doing it all over again? And how nice would it be if you had just created an Ansible playbook and you could just run one command and it sets the machine up exactly how you had it before? So that's kind of what I want to show you today. Is I have an Ansible playbook here called Deploy. It's going to deploy an application, a database, and a web server on FreeBSD. And it's going to do this using database passwords, which are stored in a secrets file, which I'll show you. You can't actually see what's in there because that's an encrypted file. So let's shrink that a little bit so you can see that's an AES 256 encrypted file. And the other thing is the format of the file is very similar to this config file. So I'll show you that one actually. The config file would have things like there's an app server and it has a port 8000. There's a ZFS pool and it has the name zroot. I want to call my database this. I want to give my database user that. So there's just different these will be variables that you can set. And if any of your variables are API keys or passwords or secrets, then you would just put them into that Ansible Vault file. Something I'm going to do
All
here.
right, can we slow down? What is Ansible?
Let me show you. That's why I wanted to start with this example real quick. I'm just going to show you what it can do. So what I'm going to do here real quick is grab a key that I can decrypt my Vault with, and we'll run Ansible. Like I said, Ansible is really going to take the place of me logging into that DigitalOcean droplet that I just created and running all the commands over SSH. So instead of
That still didn't answer the question.
So it's a login.
I have no idea.
Okay, I'll just show you. So Ansible Playbook, we'll say ask Vault pass, and then we'll just say deploy. And it's going to ask me for that decryption key. Okay, so what is it? Oh, so what does it do? Originally, like usually what I would do if I was running this machine is, let me just show you. While it does this in the background, I'll open up a different computer here. So what I would typically do is I would say SSH.
Sounds like you're saying Ansible is login software.
Well, Ansible is an automation of what you would do over SSH, really. So here's another computer that I have. Sorry, it was waking up there. So let's say that DigitalOcean droplet, for instance, right? I would usually SSH into FreeBSD and then I called that globe API workshop.lab.bsd.pw, right? And
Thank you, Craig.
I would log into this machine and I would start typing commands like I need FreeBSD to update. So I would say sudo FreeBSD update install or fetch install, right? Or I would start typing all the different things that I would need. I need Python, so I would have to type sudo package install Python 3.9, right? Or whatever, right? You can imagine there's probably a whole load of different things that I would need to run to set up my server in order to have an application with a database and a web server all configured. Maybe I would have to edit some files, right? There's probably some configuration files in here. Let's just log in as root.
Hey, Roller,
yes?
Can I take a quick stab at explaining it for folks?
Sure.
So think of Ansible. If you are familiar with stuff like makefiles or other Ant or any of the other types of things where you're compiling different programs together, think of it in terms of doing that, but for machines, for remote machines. So what you are trying to do is you're trying to give it a whole bunch of commands that you're piecing together, and then Ansible will then go through and one at a time execute those commands and make sure that everything is in a current state. And what they call it is idempotent. And what that is basically it's repeatable. So you can run this and then be assured that when you are done with it, it is all squared away and the way that you expect it to be in that remote machine.
Right. And you have the choice of creating your Ansible playbooks as idempotent or not. What I like to do is for these bigger projects like I'm doing right now, this one that has everything, right? I'm taking a server from scratch and installing the database. So let's show you what this playbook looks like. So I'm going to get out of this computer that we're logged into, and let's just log into this machine that we're currently running Ansible on, which is over here at 10.02.4, I think. Yeah, okay. So let's go into the same directory, and let's see what it's doing. So it's on the database task, so let's go look at that. So we have roles, database, tasks, and right now it's running all these tasks. So this install Postgres server package that it's doing, you'll see it's actually going through and it's installing the PostgreSQL 12 server. It's installing the PsychoPG package, and it's installing a SQLite for testing. And this auto start Postgres, that's just running the sysrc command to turn on Postgres when FreeBSD turns on. And now it's just going through all these different commands, like we need the data directory to be user local PGSQL data. I need my data set to be created on ZFS. And these are different modules being ran. I like to use the command module quite a bit, especially on these playbook where you're just setting everything up to run. And we will dig deeper into what these modules and tasks are. I just wanted to start with showing you a big task that does a lot of things so you can see the value of Ansible. I'm sorry to confuse anyone right off the bat, but let's bear with me. So, so like this one, on my Postgres server, I wanted to one of my database to avoid write amplification. So on ZFS, you can actually set up 8 kilobyte block size for the database. So in order to do that, I initialized the database here, and then I moved the directories that it created. And then I created a data set in place of those directories with the option record size 8K. And then a few other options like redundant metadata and that I got from the documentation on ZFS. And then I just need to move those files back. So I'm gonna set the chown Postgres to this directory, and then copy back all the files. And here you'll see here's a difference between command and shell. If you want to use double ampersand, you're going to need to use the shell module. Command really just runs commands. It doesn't interpret things like this. So if you need to do something like that, just use the shell. But yeah, as you can see, there's quite a few things going on here. Even things like Ansible supports things like templates, so you can read the contents of a file and pass it a bunch of information. Like I needed the database password in here, so let me show you what that file looks like. Basically, it's we have roles. Let's edit. We have roles, database, templates, and then we had this PG pass file. So this file is really just a line that shows what the database name is, and this is how you'd pass in one of those variables from that file I was showing you, the config file earlier. You just do double curly, and then the name of variable. And so I'm just saying, here's the database name, here's the database user, and the database password. And the PG pass file just allows you to do things like, when you're running a command like this, psql command, you don't have to pass the password directly right here, because it'll find that file in your in your local directory, and it'll just use that to connect to the database.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering, do you know offhand what scenarios Ansible is best for versus something like Puppet or Chef or Jenkins?
I'm pretty sure the best scenario, I think, would be, I didn't have to do anything special. With other ones, you usually have to set up an agent on the machine itself. So with DigitalOcean, I would have had to log into that machine and do something first before it was ready to allow me to start controlling it.
Okay.
And so with Ansible, you don't have to go and install some agent on the other end that can talk. It really just uses Python. And so the very first check I did here was in a common role I had. And that common role, there was a task called bootstrap Python. And really, it runs with the raw module. This is just, it literally types sudo package install Python 3.9, just to make sure that it actually has Python. And then once it has Python, then it can start using all these Ansible modules, because all these Ansible modules are written in Python.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So that's one of the I think the best parts about it is it's real easy to get up and running on remote machines. You know, if you can SSH into it, you can start controlling it. Which is probably the biggest reason why I picked it up. I did try to pick up one of those other, those other programs, and the first problem I was having was, is this agent or this module, or are these things in the FreeBSD package repository? How am I going to get them on the machine? And that's sort of where, sometimes with FreeBSD, you'll find a lot of the, unless there's more people using it, or unless you write it yourself, sometimes there aren't things that are available on Linux in the package repositories that, in FreeBSD. So a lot of the time I just end up writing things from scratch anyways. So this was a nice tool for me to use. And like I said, my favorite part about it is it's like my own documentation. Okay, so what you're seeing here now is everything finished. We had 60 commands were run, and only 58 needed to be changed. That just means that a few of them didn't, like Craig was saying earlier, the idempotent thing. It'll go to create a directory, and if that directory already exists, it will say, oh, we're okay. We didn't need to actually create that. That directory was already on the server. Things like that. Or I think one of the first ones that it said okay on was right here, was Python. It said it ran that sudo package install Python command, and it didn't need Python because DigitalOcean pre-installs Python on their droplet. So it was like, oh, we're good. We already have Python. No worries. And then it started moving on and telling you that it did make changes in all these other circumstances. So now that that machine is done, up and running, I can show it to you. So let's just go to globe API workshop.lab.bsd.pw, and here's the machine. And this machine is just running a fast API. So it has this this little interface that you can use to send commands and create things. This project, I made this open source, so it's on my GitHub. So all these commands you can go and find. Here, I'll share the link to this later, but basically here it is. Here's my Ansible directory with all this code in it, and all these, so you can go in and see everything that I'm showing you today. But this project is really all about using APIs to have computers talk with one another. So now that I have this system up and running, while I was building this system, I was actually just running two different computers like this. And I would have one computer and I would start typing in these different commands. And then the other computer I like to use VirtualBox because I can just save the machine state and take snapshots. And so I would just save a snapshot before I ran Ansible, run the playbook, make all the changes. And if I made a mistake, I could just rewind and try again and continue from there. So I thought that was how I would start this, was just to show you, look, this is on HTTPS with Let's Encrypt. And it was all set up from an Ansible playbook that had about 58 commands that needed to be run to set up an application database and a web server and have it all up and running so that I can focus on doing fun stuff and not on having that special server that's in that special state that needs to be babied. Don't touch the server because it's working perfectly. Instead of that sort of mindset, you can just have this very throw away your machine because you don't need it anymore type of mindset, or create the machine again in a different data center if you needed to and push it all back up. So it makes creating microservices and things like this pretty easily. So let's go through some slow down a little bit, and let's go through what is a playbook and how would you start with Ansible. You don't have to start with using these playbooks. You can type commands like Ansible, and then you give it the host that you want to talk to. So let's just talk to the local host. And you can do this module like a ping, right? It'll just see, well, in this case, it's, let's just get out of this folder, because since there's an Ansible configuration file in that folder, it's trying to use it. And it's also noticing that I have a vault with secrets and all that stuff. So if we go to a different folder, then we are not going to be talking about the same thing. So it's saying, hey, I couldn't find an inventory file, so let's just use localhost. And it sent ping to the localhost, and it got a response of pong. So there's one example. Another module you could use would be like there's a find module. And to give it parameters on what to look for, you can use A and then start saying things like, path equals user home. And maybe we're looking for files of type file. And it'll go through and say, we examined, there was 2 files in there. We didn't match any. Maybe we should put roller on that. There we go. And now it found all these different files. It found this Fluxbox core file, and it gives you all this great information about the file that you can use. It found this Lumina desktop core file, because I am actually in a desktop environment here, just so the fonts look a little nicer for you. But so that's how you can use Ansible without specifically doing a playbook. And playbooks don't have to be this great thing like I showed you. It doesn't have to be this big structure like this, where you have handlers, tasks, and templates for each role. You can actually type this very, very similar setup into a text file and run the playbook from that. So let's create a basic playbook just called first playbook. And by convention, YAML files are supposed to start with those 3 dashes like that. But we'll say something like, we'll give the command a name, and we'll just say my first play. And we'll just say, what are the hosts that this is going to interact with? So we'll just say local host for now. And then we'll give it some tasks, similar to having the task directory, but you can also just do it like this. And in the tasks, we'll just say name. We want to just test reachability of the server. And we'll just run the ping module, which takes no arguments. And that's really all you would need. So let's try running that. So we just say Ansible Playbook. And then what do we call that? My first playbook. And it's going to go through, and you'll see it did this gathering facts thing. And then it ran the task of test reachability, and it said it was okay. So that means our host was reachable. You can, well, let's go modify that and maybe give it one more here so I can show you some more features. So let's give it another task of installing a package. So we'll install a package called stress that you can use to stress test a machine. We'll just say package. You don't have to use the package module. They do. Ansible does include apt or apt-get or package-ng or different things like that. But I find that package module is a great one because it figures out what machine you're on, and it will just use the right packaging system depending upon the machine that you're on. And if the name of the package, so we'll have to give it a name. If the name of the package is the same, then this will work on multiple machines, even if they're not the same operating system. So, take that with a grain of salt. There are some packages that do not have the same names at all on different machines. So do you want the package present or absent? So you can use this to uninstall packages too. If I say present, then it will be present. And then I need to be root to do that. So I say become yes. And that will become, it'll use sudo to become, or since we're on localhost, it should just use su to become the super user. So let's save that and see what it does. Run Ansible Playbook again. Let's jump that up there. So Ansible Playbook, first playbook, running that, and it's going and it's installing a package. And one of the things that I did on my FreeBSD machine that you don't have to do, obviously, is if you need to provide a password. So if you type sudo and you need to provide a password to log in, then you're going to need to give Ansible that password. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I type vi sudo and I go into, I search for wheel, you'll see that anyone in the wheel group can just log in without a password. But if yours is set up to not allow that, then when people try and log in as root, they'll actually be asked for the password. If that's the case, then look what happens when you try and run the playbook. It looks like the command, it was already there, right? So it's just saying, okay, it didn't change anything. So how about we tell it to uninstall stress? So we'll just say absent. And now it's going to need to become root to do that, but we don't have root enabled to just jump right in. So perhaps it didn't need it, but essentially what I was getting at was you can pass different commands here. So if I typed capital K, then it would ask me what's the root password, or what password do you usually use when asked for your sudo password, and this is where you would type in the password. So if you have playbooks that need to run that way, then that's how you would do that. So let's just go and put that back to present and move on. Okay, so another cool feature is, as like you saw, I had so many different tasks going. What if I wanted to start at a certain task because for whatever reason? So sometimes I'll find myself wanting to start at a certain task. So I can say things on the command line here. I can just say start at task, and then equals, and I can put in install stress, and it'll go straight to that command and continue the playbook from then forward and skip everything until then. And one thing that I do a lot with my playbooks is this gather facts thing. Unless you're actually using that, which you can see what those, if you include some verbosity, you can start to see a lot about what those facts are and maybe what it's doing. Maybe you need more V's for that. But, you know, you can see the package is already present. And if you include more V's, then you can see a whole bunch more information about what's going on, and maybe the different state of the package system. So there's a lot more information you can get out of these, out of here if you want to. I typically try and limit this to either 2 V's or none, depending on what I'm doing. But start at task is nice. Another one that is nice to use besides just start at task would be step. So if I did step, it wouldn't do anything. It would just ask me, do you want to gather facts? I'll say no. Do you want to test reachability? Sure. And you can always just push C to continue and run the rest of the playbook. You don't have to step through the, so step is another way to start kind of debugging as you go along and figure out what it is that you're trying to do. I find that one really helpful, especially when I can't remember the name of a task to start it at a certain task. I'll just step through and skip a few things, and that's a nice way of doing that. So let's talk about modules now. One of the modules that I used in my playbook was called Git, because before I pushed my code public, I was running it all from a private Git repository. And in order to run it on the remote server, I had to be able to pull my code down from Git, and I used a private key to do that. If it was a public Git repository, we wouldn't have had to do that. But basically, let's go into my my Ansible Playbook here, and let's look around. So we had the roles, and I believe it's an appserver is where my Git one was, and tasks, and in here I had appserver set up. So one of the things I did was I need to install Git. So I did Git Lite, because on FreeBSD, if you just install the regular Git, it also installs the little local Git web server. There's like a little interface that you can get with Git as well, but I just wanted only the command line. And then I told it to create a directory for my deploy key using the file module. And the file module just takes the path and a state. So I'm just saying, make sure that in this path, using whatever my username is, because it gets that from my variables, create a directory. And then there's going to be a key on my local. You'll see here I had local username and username. And I did this because of there was a file on my local machine that I needed to push up to the remote box. So the file is this read-only key I was talking to you about, and I just have it in my downloads folder. And on the remote machine, it needs to be in this specific directory, and it needs to be called this specific name. And then the mode here is just, you know, read and write by the user and no one else. And then the owner and group need to be the username. So on this copy module, you can just give it a source and a destination, and then how do you want the file to be once it's copied, which this is really nice. It saves you a couple of commands. And then there's a Git module, which is really cool. So with the Git module, you just give it the repository. And in this case, this is where I created everything. So this is a different repository from the one that I shared on same code, but while I was developing it, it was a private repository. So here's where I developed it, and here's where I want the the code from here to clone to. So usually you would type git clone, and then you would type in this command right here. And instead of doing that, now I can just say git repo destination and give it this key file and just say it's okay to accept that host key. And that will clone it right into that spot. So that's that's how I use the get one. And so how would we take this information and turn it into an idempotent playbook? Let me show you that. So essentially, these commands right here are really similar to what we would actually need to do if we wanted to create a playbook that was actually idempotent. So what I mean is I don't want to run this Git Deploy playbook again because I don't know what it would do. We can run it again. I'll show you what it does because I haven't done that yet. But before I do that, let me show you how to make an idempotent playbook, one that you can just run over and over again. So we'll just call this a Git Deploy. And before I call it Git Deploy, what I wanted to show you was everything's ran here in roles. So I would need to make a new role if I wanted to use this current setup that I have, or I could, kind of like I showed you earlier with this one playbook that first playbook, we could make one kind of like all self-contained, or we can include it as part of the project. If you include it as part of the project, it's going to use all the settings of the project, including the group vars, which was this thing, our config and our secrets file here. So if that's the case, then we'll just have to make another role. So really, we'd have to make a directory and call it roles, and then git deploy. If I spelled it right, deploy. There we go. And then we would, inside of that, we would have tasks. And what else will we have? We are not going to need templates, and we're going to need the handlers. So we'll just do it like that. Let's do lowercase p actually. But this little curly on makedir will create those directories for me so that I have, if you look inside roles, git deploy now, I have those two folders. So now I can make roles, git deploy, tasks, and let's just do the one that I wanted to do, which was git deploy .yaml. And we'll just start here by pasting in everything that we had copied earlier. And it's going to, in order to include this in the way that I do playbooks, there's so many ways that you can do playbooks like I was showing you, but the way that I like to do playbooks is to have this main file. So I'll just copy one from a different directory. Let's maybe steal the one from our database. And then we'll just copy that into our git deploy task directory. And then we'll go ahead and edit it. And I'll show you kind of what it looks like. Tasks and main. So main you can use to include other files in case you start to get more than just that one file. So we just want to include the git deploy playbook that we just made. So what we've done now, let's go and take a look at it. We've created a git deploy, and we put a main file inside of tasks, and we just said include git deploy. And that way, if we start to make this a little more complicated and add more things, we can do that. But what I did this for was, there's probably a with the git deploy one. What I'd like to do is, let's go ahead and look at that one again. Tasks git deploy is, I'd like to run this over and over again every time I make a change to my code. So let's say I add a new function to my API, and I want the latest code on the server. So I'll just run this Git Deploy playbook, and it would double check to make sure it has Git. It would make sure that it has the deploy key, copy it if it didn't, and then it would make sure it has the latest code. And one thing that I want it to do when it's done is to restart my app server. So I can type in here notify and give it something like restart app server. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to trigger a lookup, and it's going to try and see if it can find something in this handlers directory with a listen keyword that says restart app server. And if it does, then it'll run that command. So I need to create a command in that handlers directory to restart my app server. And I may already have one in my my app server handlers directory. Let's check. It looks like I do. So let's just go ahead and copy all the stuff from here to this new Git Deploy one that we just created, handlers. And then let's take a look. So we'll run that tree command again. And now we have another main with a G-unicorn. So G-unicorn is the name of my app server. So let's just check out what that looks like. We have roles, Git Deploy, handlers, G-unicorn. So you'll notice right here, there's a listen and it says restart G-unicorn. So I said restart app server. So let's just go ahead and make sure that those match up. And what it's going to do is it's just going to go to the service G-unicorn and make sure that it's restarted. Now, even though this is a custom application, I installed it as a regular service on FreeBSD so I could use, specifically so I could use this handler module like I wanted to. That's one cool thing about these modules is they start to become very powerful and you can use them with your own projects. But yeah, let's go ahead and try that out. So if I did Ansible Playbook, now I need to create the actual playbook. So first, I didn't even create the playbook yet. Let's go ahead and copy one of these existing ones, and I'll kind of show you what a playbook that for this situation that I'm using looks like. So let's just say git deploy .yaml, and here's what it looks like. So I have the name, which is just apply local configuration of servers. This one is going to be get the latest code from GitHub onto the server and restart if, and it'll restart if changes. I do this gather facts false because I haven't been using the gather facts. There are facts that you can look up gather facts on the Ansible documentation and see kind of what you can do with that. But if you're not using it, it's going to slow down everything you do. So if you don't use it specifically, I recommend turning it off. So that's how you would turn it off. And I don't want to use any of these roles because I just created a specific one and I called it Git Deploy. So let's just go ahead and change this to Git Deploy. That's really all you need for your playbook. So if I was to type Ansible Playbook, I'm going to have it ask Vault pass just because of the way this directory stuff is structure set up. That's what I was trying to explain earlier, is if you don't make this self-contained, because you're including it with the project, it's going to use everything that you have in your project, including if you have a secrets file, which we'll talk about next, is how these Vault secrets work. So I just use a password manager to keep my my secrets here, right here, and that way I can easily just copy paste that thing in because it's very long. Oh, and if you don't want to keep getting asked for your key, which is going to come up, especially when you're working in these things all the time, I'll show you how to tuck the key away as well into your shell session, so that there's a few ways you can do it, but there's a pretty simple way that I like to use. So now this is idempotent. Really, I can run this as many times as I want, and if there's no changes to the latest Git code, then it's not going to do anything. But if there is a change, then it will. So I can force it. So if there's a command, I mean, we can make a change to the code real quick. Let's take a look. Let's see what we got going on here. So yeah, we added those 2 new roles. Yeah, right. We just added this new playbook. So we want to add that to to GitHub. So since GitHub is also on my SSH and it's going to ask me for my key again, here's what my favorite thing to do as I create an alias for it is SSH agent. So I just type SSH agent TCSH because that's the, oops, sorry about that. That's the shell that I'm using. And then here's another alias that I use, SSH add, and then you add your key. And when you do that, you only have to type this one time when you start working, and your key is now a part of your environment. You'll see up here you have this SSH auth socket, and basically anytime you try to connect to something, it'll try and use this key, and you don't have to keep on typing your password over and over again. So let's go into that project. Let's okay, so I'm on the main branch. I need to create a new branch. So the way you do that, if you already have changes, is you just type switch C, and then you can just create a new branch. So we'll just say Git Deploy. And now if you look, we brought our changes with us. So we can just say git add dot git commit created a deploy playbook for git code, and then we'll just git push origin main. We're gonna type that right, and that'll push the code up, and that's just connecting to GitHub. And let's try that one more time. Okay, everything's up to date. Oh, we don't want to push origin main. We want to push origin Git Deploy. That's the name of the branch that we created. So we're going to push up that branch. And then we just need to go create a pull request real quick. So, because that's how I typically do my code, is through pull requests. So I can keep track of everything that I've done. So I'll just very quickly jump over here to my, I'll just accept this pull request and say, yes, we're good. Thank you. Merge that in and delete that branch. And let's go back here real fast. So now I just want to git checkout main. And let's pull down that latest code. And let's delete that branch real quick while we're here. Okay, so that's the typical workflow I would go through to make a change. And so now I need my server to have that change, whatever it was, right? Whatever that change ended up being. So if I wanted to run that Ansible Playbook command again, then I would just say ask vault pass and git deploy. But we need to go into the directory first. So let's go into Ansible. The reason why we need to go in the directory is we have all this configuration set up, and if we're not in the directory, then it's not going to find it. So Ansible Playbook, ask vault pass, and then come on, git deploy. It's going to ask me for the password again, and we may still have it copied, may not, I don't remember. So let's just go copy it one more time. And now it should see that there was new code. It doesn't need to install Git, that's fine. It doesn't need to create the directory or copy the key, but it does need the latest code. So that should change. And it did. And now it should restart the app. And the app restarted. So that's a very typical thing that you would need to do. And now we've just made it idempotent. We've just made it so that if I run that one more time, it's not going to restart my app server again because it didn't need to. It's only going to run that handler if the code was at the not at the latest version. And this is super helpful, especially when you don't want to forget to restart your server when you made changes to the code, which can happen pretty regularly. That's a typical scenario you end up in. Okay. So that's one of the ones I wanted to show you, is how to do something cool like that. How's everybody feeling about Ansible right now? I'm hoping that I know there's a lot here, but also, the amount of time I have to show you this, I wanted to get, this is on recording and all the code is in my repo, so you can go in and grab it. But I just want to make sure we have a lot of information so that you can learn a lot really quickly, or take your time, right? So let's talk about some of the other things that happened here. So I'll do that by logging into one of my other machines, and we'll kind of do this side by side, so I can show you it just takes a second to get out of this screensaver here. So we'll give that a second, but let me scoot this side by side. So I'll scoot this guy over here a little bit, and I'll scoot this guy over here a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about some of these modules that were used. So far we've covered a few modules like the Git and copy and shell and command, but let's talk more about setting, some of the other ones. In order to get this all working, what do I have to do? So let's SSH into this box again, this DigitalOcean box, so we can take a look at some of the files. Globe API workshop.lab.b. Okay, so we're in DigitalOcean, into that box, and we're just going to log in as root so we can see everything, and we'll start poking around and seeing what some of these files look like. Like, for instance, we had this bootloader.conf.local file. One of the things that I wanted to change on here was this. So for some reason, this is set to 30 on DigitalOcean, which just blows my mind. I don't know why they set that to 30. But which essentially means that the FreeBSD is going to sit at its main prompt when it first turns on for 30 seconds before it turns on. And I don't like that. So I changed it to 2. Well, how did I do that? Let's go find it. So it was in, I did this one in the, probably not in the most sensible place, but the last thing I was working on was the web server. So that's where I put it. Down here. So you'll see that, let's go find this one. So I wanted to decrease the boot delay time. So I used this module called lineinfile, and I told it to look for this this file called bootloader.conf.local. And I said, we're looking for the string auto boot delay equals 30. And I want to change it to this line, auto boot delay equals 2. And that's what it did. It logged in, it edited this file, it changed that from 30 to 2. That's lineinfile is great if you just want to change one line. But if you notice right below it, what is this? We had this Ansible managed block and Ansible managed block. Well, what if you want to add multiple lines? That's where you use something called a blockinfile. So let's go find that one. Right here, blockinfile. So I wanted to go to the same file, and I used a pipe here to say just everything after this needs to just go into this file, basically. So however much data I wanted to type, whatever I wanted in the file, I would just type it right here. So I typed those 2 lines, and those 2 lines appeared in the file, which is great. The blockinfile is fantastic for multi-line edits to a file. Very, very good tool. So we can talk about synchronize. I hadn't used synchronize in this project, but we can start it from scratch. So how would we do synchronize? Basically, synchronize is going to be, let's see, it uses rsync on the back end. So the first thing we would need to do would be to make sure rsync is installed. So let's go ahead and do that. So here, we'll exit this machine now. And let's get out of here. Okay, and let's make this bigger again. And now let's go make a synchronized one. So what would we want to synchronize? So typically I would use synchronize to do stuff like what my database needs to be backed up regularly, and so does some of the. Since it's just an API, it's not there's not really files that I'm adding to the website like a blog with pictures or anything like that. I would just need to back up the database. So what I would do is I would just say I need to make a directory for a database backup in my roles, and then inside of that I'll create just my tasks folder because I don't really need anything else. And since that doesn't exist yet, we got to give it that P. And then we can just do the same thing like we did before. We'll just copy in that main file because I don't really feel like editing it. So we'll just copy that Git Deploy tasks main file, and we'll just copy that to the roles, database backup, and tasks. Let's throw that in there. And then we'll go ahead and edit that. So roles, database backup, tasks, and then main. And what do we want to call this one? Let's call it, maybe we just call this a database backup. So now we just need to create a file with that same name in that folder, and we'll be good to go. So we'll just say vim, I'm going to make this up here so you can see it. Roles, database backup, tasks, and then we'll say database backup. So in here, we're going to need a file called, you don't have to call it anything. We're just going to start typing. So we're going to say name, and what do we need first? We need to make sure that, we have rsync. So how would you do that? You just say package and give it a name of rsync. And you just say, as super user, you need to be to do that. So we'll become yes. And that should work for that. And then the module is called synchronize that uses rsync. So we would just say, download the database backup. Of course, we would probably want to have one that says, whoa, sorry about that. Oh, dang it. Okay. I don't know why it was going so slow. Sorry. Anyways, so we'll say name. First we want to run the backup command, right? Backup the database, which for here, we'd probably have some command module that runs something that backs it all up. But for this, I'll just we'll just touch a file. So I'll just say touch. You can use the file command here with the state of touch as well. I guess I could show you that. So you can say file, and we could just say state is touch, and give it a name of backup file .db or something like that. So that's how you can just create a file, and usually these are all run from just the main folder, user home and in the home folder of the person. So that's where we're going to look for it. So how would we get that file synchronized to our computer? We would just create a get the backup file, and we would use synchronize. And this could be a whole directory. This can just be anything, but we're just going to test it with this one file. So we'll do synchronize, and then you give it a mode. And the mode is I want to pull data from the remote server to my local machine. And then you just say where do you want to pull the data from? So I would just say home. And in this case, the user is called FreeBSD. And then what is the destination? And since I didn't actually create a folder, let's just, for sake of, let's just do it like this. I will just use the command here so we can skip ahead real quick, and we'll just say, make dir, or let's use shell. I like shell better because I'm going to do two things. I'm going to say make dir backup db, and then we'll say touch backup backup file.db, something like that. So we're just going to say the source is in their home folder. Backup db is the folder that we want to pull down, and then the destination, where do we want to save that folder? We'll just save it to our own home. Maybe we'll just save it in my projects folder. I'll just save it there. Yeah, so that's really how you would do that. So let's go ahead and run that and see what it does. Now to do that, let's create a playbook again. So let's just copy the Git Deploy playbook to a new one called database backup, and then vim that database one backup. And then we'll just say this only applies to the host's database backup, to the roles of database backup. And let's run it, see what happens. Ansible Playbook, ask vault pass, and database backup. And let's go copy that again. Give it its key, and making sure we have rsync. Okay. And what did we get wrong? It failed to find rsync, it says, on my computer. So you need rsync on both ends. So this computer would also need rsync. So I can either install that manually, or I could use Ansible, and we could just say Ansible localhost, and just say the module is called package, and the what are we given it is name. Name is rsync, and state is present. That should work. Unless I typed it wrong. Let me see what I typed wrong. What did I type wrong? Oh, right here. Yeah, around all your stuff, you need to put the quotes. So
I think you misspelled present.
oh, thanks. Yes, pres. And I believe that my quotes need to just be around everything. When you do the -a, then you just do quotes around the whole statement. And yeah, since this is in that directory, let's get out of that directory. It's trying to use my configuration for that directory, which I don't want it to. And now it's saying I have insufficient privileges. This is what I was trying to show you earlier. Because since I changed my vi sudo, I have to give it my sudo password now, because it can't just because my user's in the wheel group, it can't just become. So you do -K to provide it with your password. And then this is where you would type in your password. And maybe I didn't type become on the playbook itself. Oh, this isn't a playbook. What is it saying? It's saying cannot update catalog, insufficient privileges to update the repository. Okay. It might just be because on FreeBSD you have to type this become. Let's try this. Here's another one that I wanted to show you was become method. Which might be something that you'll run into on your operating system if you're trying to control it when you're not on. Let's see what I used. So I've done this in this local file. I had a deploy playbook here. Let's see what I've got. Ansible, and we've got this appserver, FreeBSD, and then I had the local one. And you'll see right here I had to do become method su. Isn't that what I just typed? Yeah. And connection local. Let's try that as well. Okay, well, if I was to set it up in a, we'll just skip this part, but if I was to set it up like this, it should work. Well, let's see, what are we doing? We're running the package module. Yeah, here, I'll just, and let's go back to running our playbook and see what it does. We could debug that later. That should work. There's always those fun things in live demos, but we will just skip that for now. So let's just go Ansible Playbook, and we did the database. So let's just do ask vault pass, and then we did the database backup. And then we're going to need that key one more time. And okay, so this is supposed to go to our server, make a backup, and then download the backup. And what does it say? It says backup the database, file exists. Oh, because this is not idempotent because I didn't use the file module. So it's basically just saying, we tried to do this, but the file already exists. And this is a good one to show you as why would you want to do start at tasks, right? And or step. So step is a good one if you can't remember the name of, like for right now, since I don't have the name up on the screen, I'll just do step. but this is a good scenario for why would you use step or why would you want to start at task. So if you're having an issue and you just want to skip ahead, and like this will come up a lot when you're developing a playbook, is you'll have, oh yeah, I forgot to do that, but rather than fix it, you can just use step and just say, do we have the latest version of our sync? I want to skip that one. You want to back up the database? No, we are. Let's skip that one. Let's get the backup file. Yeah, let's do that one. And look, so now we should have in our projects directory. So let's just cd into projects. We should have that backup DB, and in here, there is no file, unfortunately. But it did grab the directory, so maybe it didn't. Oh, okay. It's because it didn't get to create the file because the command failed. But essentially, that's how synchronize would do its thing. Is let's set this back up and try it one more time. So we'll just SSH FreeBSD at Git. What was it called? Globe API workshop. And let's look in here. So we created that backup file. Oh, because I didn't create it inside the folder. Yeah, that might help. File. Cool. And let's just get rid of that as well. Okay. So as you can see, there, you'll inevitably run into some issues, and step is definitely helpful for skipping some tasks and sort of moving on to a different one to see kind of what you were doing. But really, this database backup, we could always refine this. Actually, we wanted to go into the role. Oops. Sorry about that. We wanted to go into the role database backup. And the task, and then the database backup playbook. And so we could obviously refine this. We wouldn't want to do this shell thing because obviously I messed that up and didn't even do that right. But we could always just change this to, the file module. And if you look at the documentation on file, here's what I usually do is I'm in here a lot. I just type Ansible docs file module, and you'll start to see things like this built-in file, and it has all these useful. It'll tell you what every little thing, but then it has this awesome section right here where you can just jump down real quick and you can start to see change file ownership, create a link, touch a file. Yeah, so state is touch and the path is where you want it. Create a directory if it doesn't exist. So really we want this one and we want this one. So we would just, use these as a nice little template and just say what the path. So you don't have to do this Ansible.built-in. You could just say file. But so the path is the directory and the state is directory. So we could just say path is where the directory was, which was home, FreeBSD, backup, DB, and the state is directory. And then the other one would be to let's create the backup file, and then we just say file, and what was that? again. It was to touch, we would just say the path and the state is touch. So the file we're looking for would just be path home FreeBSD backup db backup file.db, and then state is touch. And now let's run that, and let's go up a few and run that again, and we don't need step anymore. And let's see what that did. So this is exactly how I've developed my playbooks, is just running through, trying to do things in shell or command, making them nicer once I get the actual command working, and then so let's just make sure that that works. So so let's look in our projects folder, and do we have a backup DB, and does it have a file in it? Yes, it does. So that literally is, now all we'd have to work on is what is the backup to the database command, and then run that command. And then maybe we'd want to do something like state absent, like this, so we can actually just give it recursively remove directory. We can give it the path of the directory for our backup file after we've downloaded it, and just say state absent, and it'll erase it from the remote server. So that's typically what I would do. And as you can see, that one playbook is now idempotent. We could run that one more time, and it shouldn't make any changes because it doesn't need to. Except the touch, I guess, touch is one of those commands that it's not specific enough. It's just gonna touch the file, right? Because sometimes people use touch to update the date times of a file, and since we updated it, then it's gonna back it up again. So maybe let's run this, and just to make sure, start at task equals, and let's see what happens if we go straight to get the backup file without touching anything. Yeah, see, since the file wasn't touched and the timestamp of the file wasn't updated, it didn't need to run that synchronize command again. So this is a super cool tool. I really like to use it, and like I showed you, that this is how I sort of debug my playbooks, is using the start at task and this step. And I like to organize my playbooks like this because they start to get bigger and bigger, and the whole idea of shoving everything into one file, I just would rather do it like this. So let's talk about this secrets. What is the secrets, and how do we manage that? Since this is just I'll just show you my secrets file, because I can always just update the variables. So you would say Ansible Vault, not Playbook. So you say Ansible Vault, and we would just say edit. And that'll use whatever your default editor is. So if you were to echo editor, I should be Vim, which I am. So and that's set in your shell. So if you just do Ansible Vault edit, and then give it the path, so group vars all secrets, it'll say decrypt this, please, and you decrypt it. And I didn't type the right thing, so let's just go copy this again and run that one more time. It just said basically the command you gave me wasn't correct. Okay, and here you'll see these are all different variables, things that can easily be changed, so I will change those. But I figured I would just show you. DB password and the a few API keys. And what you can do is just edit this file and save, and now it's ready to go. So what I would typically do when I come into a project is that file wouldn't exist, right? We would have like group vars all secrets would be gone. So I would have to create it. Now to create the file, you just say Ansible Vault create, and then just give it the path. And this specific path is searched for if you set your Ansible playbook up in this directory structure that I've set up for you in this project. So that's kind of why I like it like this. Otherwise, there are a lot of flags people typically use when they're using Ansible playbook commands to tell Ansible where everything is. And if you just use this, if you set things up how I've set them up here, you don't have to include a lot of the flags when you run Ansible, which makes it easier to remember when you come into a project how to work with it. So you type create, and then it says what do you want the password to be, and now you can start editing and giving it those values, value, etc. And then when you save it, now you can't see what's in it. It's a encrypted file. And then you can also type Ansible Vault view. So if you just wanted to look at the file but not go into the editor, you just type Ansible Vault view, and that'll just pass it to standard out and bring you right back to where you want it to be. That was the Ansible Vault. And the let's look at this one more time. The reason why I use this path structure is it helps me so that I can keep my my playbooks here at the top. So these are just different playbooks that I was creating as I was going along. It helps me keep my variables over here in a configuration file. And then it helps me so that I have different template files. So let's look at one of these. So that appserver, when I typed service restart gunicorn, the reason why that worked was because of this file. This template file I created using the FreeBSD documentation on how to create your own startup, how to work with the RC system and create your own startup scripts. So you can include actual code as templates. And then when they're, for my project, I needed this environment template, and these things need to be populated with different values, and you can get all those values from your vault and from your configs file just by using those double curly braces. So let's take a look at one of those files. So we'll just say vim roles appserver templates gunicorn. And here it is. And anytime I needed to pull a variable out of that file, I just did the double curly and then the variable name. And so to create a startup script in here, you just give it a name. So it's going to look for gunicorn. And where is it going to look for it? It looks for it inside the virtual environment, which is right here. The virtual environment's just in the user's home folder inside the project directory, and then inside of vim bin, and then gunicorn would be right under there. So that's where it's going to run the command. And then the command interpreter, since this is Python script, this is a thing you can do to tell FreeBSD that this is a Python script. You just say Python's in here, and it's called Python 3.9 on FreeBSD. And then I also added this proc name, which is similar to command, but that's just so that the name of the program is gunicorn when you look on top and things like that. I gave it a PID file, and I just said use that same name from up here. And then any of the flags. So here's all the flags that I passed it. So you just say RC flags, and you just say all the different things that you wanted it to do. So I want it to be a daemon in the background. I want it to log to this file, which is in that same directory, but I called it unicorn log. Run as this username in that group. Change into this directory when you're running the command, and then use for workers, and use this app to start up. App.main and then app. And now I can service start unicorn, service restart unicorn, and it runs like a normal service. It just has to be put into the correct folder, which was done in my playbook a little bit earlier. Inside of the so that's I'll show you how that one specifically was done. So let's go to where there's template. And you'll see there's quite a few of them here, but here's the GUnicorn one. So we said template, we told the source, and with source, it's just going to look in the current role that we're in and in the template folder. So this is just looking for that GUnicorn file. And where do I want it? I want it to be right here in rc.d, and I want it to be called GUnicorn and become yes. And then I just needed to allow it, make it executable. And now I can start it like a normal service. So it's just those two commands, and we're good to go. That's how you would use template, and why template is super nice for things that are a lot more than blockinfile, right? I don't know if I'd really want to write all that into a blockinfile command. When I could easily just use template and a couple of variables. So that's typically why I would do it like that. The other file we can look at is this ansible.cfg. What is in here? Really, all that I really put in here is I put this little defaults directive, and I just say, use the inventory file called hosts. So how does it know where my DigitalOcean droplet is and which one to use? It's in the host file. I'll show you that in a second. And then where's the Python binary on this local machine? So on here, it's in user local bin Python 3.9. And then is there a name of the remote user that I need to use when I'm connecting to the box? And you can put it here, remote user equals FreeBSD. You could also put it here. So if one of these servers had a different username that needed to be logged in, I could always just put remote user equals roller, and for that specific machine, it would SSH with roller instead of the main directive like it showed a minute ago. And you can also use this for any kind of if your Python's in a different location, you could just do that interpreter Python command and give it a different value there as well, just for specific machines. But this is how I would group the different machines into their roles, and how they would work. What other files? I believe those were really the only configuration that we have, besides just the fact that this is all stored in this nice folder structure. Is we just have that the host file, the roles directory, the group vars directory, and our playbook with this config file. And that's typically how I would set things up. Otherwise you're just going to get some massive, like I showed you at the beginning with that first playbook. You could have tasks, templates, you could have all of these just in one big file, but you'll start to find that you're going to be reading this a lot to figure out what are all these little commands I need to pass it to tell it where things are, where my inventory file is, for instance. You could pass that along, or there's all kinds of different things. And I always, since I do tend to use this a lot, I try and keep it real simple and project-based. And this tree structure has helped me keep it very project focused, so that I can just pull my project. It has all my stuff there, and I can start working on it, and pretty much have the commands memorized, but none of these flags memorized, because I didn't have to, I set it all up in the variables. But that's probably where I'm going to stop. Thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something. Again, everything's over here on this this GitHub. I made this BSD programming workshop, Fast API, Twilio, and the email data entry. So here it is, and I will paste this into the chat here.
Are there any questions out there? Feel free to raise your hand. Also, a reminder, please fill out the survey card so that we can, number one, get feedback, but also, hey, Gib.
So I guess I'm interested in understanding how a team might share the files and things like that. So that tree with all the different templates and things like that, would that, you think typically each person would own their own files like that? Or would they all share out, the common types of commands and templates and things of that nature?
I mean, I would imagine we would all just be sharing it the same way we share our Python code. That's why I included it as in the Ansible directory and the GitHub repository, so that we could all just check out the latest version, and everything would be there and ready to go. That's why I included it just as part of the GitHub project. But if you wanted to, you could separate your playbooks out into each person has their own. But I think it'd probably be easier in a GitHub repository, so you can track the changes and have it all just sitting right there.
Well, I also noticed that you seem to be you're borrowing some playbooks and pieces of things from various places. I assume there's whole wads of different places to go to find all kinds of specific things you can just pull into your code.
Yes. So that's another thing that I started looking into was, now that I have this all automated, how do I automate the DigitalOcean piece? And there's this, if you look in when you install Ansible, one of the commands it gives you is called Ansible Galaxy, Ansible-Galaxy, kind of like we did Ansible Vault and Ansible-Playbook. But Ansible-Galaxy has all kinds of different modules. So if you just go to Ansible Galaxy, let me see what the website is. Yeah, galaxy.ansible.com. There is a whole community of, I'll just show you this website real quick, of people that are sharing their different things that they've built. And you can, there should be documentation on, you just type Ansible Galaxy something or other, and it'll get it for you, like system administration roles. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, Ansible Galaxy collection install, and this guy's roles, and then he'll explain to you kind of what he built here, and documentation on, log rotate that he wrote, or whatever these different commands are. NTP, well, let's go see what that one is. So he built one where you could just say install NTP and set some custom servers. You just do this role and run those, and then it sets it up. So there are, this Ansible Galaxy is pretty cool. Oops, I guess we were on this page, but it is pretty cool because you can dig through a lot of different things that other people have put together for you, as well as one that I'm looking at right now is DigitalOcean created. Oh, they're in here somewhere. They have one, yeah, this community collection, and they have one where you can create droplets and set DNS records and do everything that I just showed you in DigitalOcean, but from Ansible. So I'm currently studying this one and figuring out how it works. And because I was just going to write just a Python request file with some API keys and have it go and use the API. But then I seen this and was like, oh, actually, this is kind of cool. You know, here's how you would add your SSH key, and here's how you create a new droplet. And I thought, might as well just install that into the code. That looks pretty neat. And the way that these work, somewhere in here, they'll tell you there's a specific Ansible host file that it'll use, because your host file is going to be now created dynamically, right? That you're not going to have the server to run the commands on until it's created. So they have ways of doing that. And you just have to, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is reading some of these and seeing how I would go about doing that. And, you know, those are some interesting ideas to fully automate the whole thing.
Well, it looks like you have a number of like SSH commands that you could enter in, and I'm just curious, what's the approach you usually use when you're remote and you want to, you know, execute through these things? Are you setting up an environment and then jumping into that, or do you sort of like spontaneously create an environment with and then pull everything into it? What's sort of a bootstrap question, I guess?
Okay. I mean, what I typically do is a lot of the services I run are these microservices, or maybe a little blog or things like this, where it's an app server, a database, and a web server. And I'm not that interested in a lot of the uptime of the machine. I'm not really so interested in a lot of the log files of the machine. But I do know that over time, the machine will start to grow log files, and it'll start to accumulate all this extra stuff just from running. And so what I'll do periodically is I'll just run my playbook to backup database and files. So go get all the stuff that's unique, that's not part of my my GitHub repository, like the database and the whatever files, maybe blog photos have been updated by the users or things like that. So it'll grab all those things. Then I can just create a new droplet and a brand new computer and run my command again, and it puts it all back together and sets up Let's Encrypt and everything. And the server is now on the latest version, and I didn't have to do anything special. I didn't have to upgrade it. I didn't have to, right? It just saves. It's kind of like a lazy way of doing things, but sort of like you know, it's going to be set up exactly how you needed it to be set up, type of thing. And then it's kind of fun to see like what changes. Like when a new version of FreeBSD comes out, I'll run my playbook on a fresh server over there and see and if anything had changed. And usually it's little things like somebody changed git-lite to git-something else, or maybe they split a package up into something. But it's typically like little things, and then you go, oh, okay, and then you fix it. But I think it just gives you that. For me, it gives me both the ability to move on from one machine to another without being so. Because I remember in the past, like when I was first learning a lot of this stuff, I was digging through Joomla and PHP and all these things, and I would get my system up and running and not really understanding because I didn't write it all myself. I didn't do each configuration file. I didn't edit it all. I was using phpMyAdmin. I was using these GUI tools to sort of help me. But then it gives you this very fragile system of it's working, and I don't want to mess it up because I got it working. I just wanted to get away from that. I wanted to get to, that's really what attracted me to FreeBSD, was it doesn't do anything for you until you tell it to most of the time. And it's all text based, so you can keep track of exactly what you told it to do. And I really like that approach versus, I mean, the same idea like with Linux distros, right? Like you install some new Linux distro, you're using it, and you run some command, and then you can't log into your desktop anymore because something broke and you don't understand what you did and why it doesn't work. So the easiest way, I mean, you could debug and figure out what happened, or you could just create a new one and, okay, I'm not going to run that command again because it broke everything. And that's sort of what got me into FreeBSD as well, was those type of strange issues with these, someone else set the system up and not me. And I don't really understand when I'm stepping on someone else's toes and messing up some configuration. Ansible just really, like I said, is my documentation. It helps me keep track of everything that I've asked the computer to do and things that I forgot that I asked it to do. And then later when I want to make another project, I'm like, hey, I need that Postgres server again. So I just go grab the role Postgres, copy in that whole directory, and I've got my server. It's got SSL. Oh, I need Nginx again. Let's just pull in the web server role. And it's got, Let's Encrypt and everything's all set up. And I don't have to go through that again. And it just makes it so much better when you start to take these services that you start building for yourself or friends or whoever, and you put them into a playbook, and then it's really like a mini version of you that would just sit there and edit files. Why is this not working? Figure it all out. And what did I do last time? And pulling out your notebook and trying to figure out all the little things that you had written down. And it just makes all that runnable. And that's what I love about it is I try and move more and more of the cool things that I do into playbooks so that I can do them again on other machines. Set up the router again for a new house, or set up the Plex servers, or the file sharing with Samba and things like that. Instead of remembering exactly, or going through your history file and trying to remember exactly what I did before, I can just create these nice little playbooks that make it all, something I can check into my GitHub and just have it there.
So how do you handle like what I call version drift? So you run your playbook on a Monday, and it picks up Python 3.7, and you run the same playbook, same identical stuff, and it picks up Python 3.8 and it breaks something. Do you specifically indicate which versions of everything, or are you just letting the system pick whatever? I've seen you use the keyword latest. I'm just wondering if you have a solution for that.
So with Python in particular, I tell it exactly what version to use. And then, like I said, with I'll just launch it in a new droplet and see what's broken. And if something broke, then I'll start to use the start at task and the step, and I'll make some changes, and then I'll start at task and see if I can get my playbook to continue running. That's typically how I do it. And then inside of my my Python projects, I just use I pin all the versions in there specifically. But for package updates on FreeBSD, I always just go for the latest version. And if something's changed, then I will either go and read the ports page on it to see what the person said that they changed. And I typically like to stay on the latest versions of all the ports and packages. So yeah, I'll just I wouldn't really run my playbook like the way that I run my playbooks is really for long running services or short running services. So if I was running a service that I hadn't ran in a while and a lot of things had changed, I would just quickly go through and figure out what's different and fix it. And then now I've got it to the 2021 version and everything's working good now. So that next time I want to use it hopefully not too much has changed again. But with FreeBSD, you don't really find things changing out from under you too often. Really, it's going from 12 to 13. sometimes there'll be a couple things like I noticed they changed Vim, because I like to use the GUI version of Vim only because I don't use the GUI version, but I use the copy paste. And if you don't have the GUI version compiled, then you can't use the copy paste. And I really like that. So they just changed the name of the package for that. So now you have to type like vim-GUI or something. And before you just typed Vim, or you typed vim-console if you didn't want it. But they just change, just like there's a couple, maybe the package maintainer just changed a few things. And, if you want to, you just can build your own package repository and make all the different customizations that you want there. So that's always another fun use of, that was another fun use of Ansible, that is using the synchronize along with building your own custom package repository, because compiling packages takes forever, right? So why not go on DigitalOcean and rent a server that's insanely powerful and costs like, instead of 0.007 cents an hour, it costs like 25 cents an hour, and you run it for an hour and it compiles all your packages, and then you synchronize it down and destroy the thing. That's another good use for Ansible that I like to do as well, is create a server, do a bunch of work on it, pull down all the results from it, and then throw the thing away. And that's kind of why I wanted to get into the Ansible galaxy of how do I create and destroy droplets as part of my playbook, because that's really the only manual thing I'm doing at this point anymore, is going into the interface and making a droplet. So I would like to automate that part.
Gib, you're muted. We do have time for one more question.
Okay, well, so make it a good one. Does anyone else have a question? I'll step aside here.
Well, barring that, why don't you go ahead and ask your question then?
Okay, so it really has to do with, so it sounds like in a small group, you've got a couple people sharing. How about in larger environments? Have you seen like, I don't know, like master administrators who manage the big package environments and manage sharing the resources out and making sure that all the resources are handled by different groups, and or is this pretty much like a small shop kind of approach?
So in one of my other groups, the Python developer mindset group, there's guys, when I talk about Ansible, they're always talking about how they use it at work using this thing called Ansible Tower and Kubernetes. So they actually have it deploying all their stuff for their organization. And Ansible Tower is sort of like a GUI interface of the whole Ansible Playbook environment. And it's a paid tool Red Hat manages. But it was designed to be simple but powerful, and Ansible was definitely designed to be used in large-scale infrastructure. I do it all on my personal projects, but some people in this other groups I work with are always talking about. So take a look at Ansible Tower and how it works with Terraform, I think they called it, and Kubernetes, something like that, and Docker, and they're doing like all these fancy things and trying to get me into it, and I'm like, well, if I was going to do that, I'd use FreeBSD jails. I would write something in FreeBSD that makes sense to me, because like I said, I want my stuff to be very understandable to me, and not get too far out of my comfort zone, so that I can take these small steps and start with a command module and then turn it into the file module with the idempotent way of doing things. But there's no reason why your playbook can't just be a bunch of commands and shell and until you get the hang of it, and then you can start adapting it and making it nicer.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, I'm going to thank you, Roller, so much for this excellent presentation, for telling us all about Ansible. I know myself, I use Ansible pretty much on a weekly basis, and I find it absolutely amazing, especially because I have a fallible memory, and it does all the remembering for me.
Exactly.
So thank you.